Hey everyone, this is Alex from Jove. We're back again with Molly, who is a junior at Temple, to hear about her experience renting so that you know what you're getting into when renting at college. So, with that, Molly, what has been your experience renting in college so far?
Overall, it has not been good. Um, our first apartment, we weren't able to find for a while. It took us a long time because we had a late start because we
Okay.
didn't know as freshmen going into college that you have to look like as soon as October for your next place to live. And I was with three other girls in a quad in a dorm. So we decided to all live together again because at that point we still hadn't like made solid friends. So that
Mhm.
was all we had. So you're limited in that way. And then originally we had two other people on our floor in our dorm that wanted to live with us also. So like at first there were six of us looking for a place that had six bedrooms, and we didn't know that that was not a thing. Like that wasn't really easy to find. So it ended up us being broken up, and then we had to restart our search. And at that point it was close to Thanksgiving. So like your options are pretty much like slim to nothing at that point, and we had
Well,
no
hold on
idea.
a sec. So, this is you in your freshman year fall semester,
Yes.
and you're saying that, like, by Thanksgiving, if you haven't found a place, there's like slim to no options left.
Yeah, I mean, and like the nothing options would be like we saw some places that were clearly being like on the outskirts of where like where everyone's living, and they're clearly like starting to venture out. So these would be like your first, like the first tenants at a place that's being built close to 20th Street, which is like the farthest I would say people live right now,
Okay.
as of recently. So at that point, it's like that's like your last choice, and it's not a good one.
What's your commute like if you're living out by like 20th Street?
Um, well, I lived like on 18th, close to 19th,
Um,
so it was it was a little bit of a walk. Like it was probably 15 minutes, like a 15-minute like solid walk to your class,
oh,
which isn't that bad.
okay.
But obviously given like other circumstances, like like the building is like backed up, like getting into your actual class sometimes it would take a little bit longer.
Okay.
So I would always plan like for 20 minutes just to be safe. But yeah, I know a lot of people that is considered far though for living off campus at
Gotcha.
Temple.
Did you always walk, or did you like bike or take the bus at all?
I always walked, but if I left at night, like leaving the library or something, they do have like Temple, forget what it's called, but it's like a van or service that
Okay.
takes you back, which is really nice. So you could do that at night because you're not likely to walk home at night if you live that far. So yeah.
Gotcha. Now, how did you find out about that van service? Is that something that's commonly known for students, or did you stumble upon it?
I thought it would be more like widely like known because it's like very convenient. It's kind of like an Uber, but you don't pay. Obviously, it's part of the like the school, which is a really nice like thing. And I didn't know about it until basically like halfway done my sophomore year of college, which is like weird because as freshmen that would be something I would think you would more like
Right.
advertise as new freshmen. So yeah.
How do you schedule the van?
It's through an app that you download. It's a separate app. It's not a good app. It's very slow. Like it has a lot of issues. That's why people tend to not wait because the wait is like very long. So maybe that's why I didn't hear about it. It's not that popular because at that point you'll just take an Uber if it's just gonna take forever and it's
Right.
unpredictable. And sometimes they're not running.
Mhm.
Like they run per something, but there's a break in between, and if you're not lucky, like you miss the complete time slot. So it's not the best, but they do
Okay.
have it.
But it's free, which for a college student is always good.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. How was safety like in that first apartment that you had? This was your sophomore year. You were living on like 18th around 19th Street. How's the safety like around there? And
Um,
what intersection was it?
so it was on 18th and Norris, so it's right
Okay.
by Burke's, and Burke's is like a popular street,
Mhm.
but that's also considered like very close to like the outskirts of where you should be. So um At first, initially, like I thought it wasn't that bad. Again, like when I viewed it and toured it my freshman year, like that was kind of all we had, and it wasn't like a terrible interior and stuff. So it was like okay. But then once we obviously had to start living there, we started realizing and seeing things like that weren't comforting, and like we actually did have like some encounters with things, and like our landlord was not that accommodating about it because
Mhm.
we didn't have an alarm system, which I'm pretty sure, again, like why a lot of landlords in Temple get away with things is like I'm pretty sure they had said in it um that like when we were viewing it, I think it said like as one of the amenities, like it did have that, or I mean not amenities, like things it had for security was a
Yeah.
security system, and it just didn't exist. Like I mean, like they said it was there and it was, but it wasn't working because they were saying how landlord would say that like if we had it on, if we all we're not all connected, all 3 units. I lived in an apartment with 3 units, and then someone sets it off and like whatever. So they just opted not to do it at all,
Hmm.
which is what made us really want to move in a way, because it wasn't like that like nice, and our downstairs unit would leave our door open like unlocked, like just it wasn't the best with safety. So
Got it.
yeah.
What type of landlord were you dealing with? I understand that there's different types. Like there's the bigger landlords, there's the smaller landlords. Can you talk about that?
Well, I can actually talk more about it now that I have like something to compare it to. So
Okay.
my first one was like a private landlord. Like he owned a few properties at Temple, and he completely did all like the maintenance and everything. And it was kind of like old fashioned in a way, you could say. I mean, like we would mail our checks, or well, at first it was just mailing our checks, but he wasn't really good with communication. So he would be there when we needed things for maintenance, which was nice, but communicating about um, our rent and stuff was kind of hard. At times he like wouldn't answer the phone, or like he got a new phone and didn't tell us, and then we had to like track him down.
Oh wow.
And then towards the end of our time there, he started using Venmo, but it was through his daughter because like she, I guess, knows how to work it, and he didn't. And like that's kind of unclear because like you know it's not him directly, and so that kind of got messed up, and it wasn't really that clear. But then now that I moved, and so the new place is an agency and or group, and they have like a portal system which is really nice. And they have their website is like very clear, like it's like this is the button to request maintenance, and then you request it. And all of the times I've had to like talk to them through email, they've been very fast in replying. And I think the portal is the best part because I guess you just pay through it, so it's like a very direct and like clear system. So um, it's really like a big difference, but we'll see if they like actually are like good at
Maintaining.
providing and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, given your experience so far, you haven't actually moved in. I know that right now you're in this holding period, which we'll get to. You haven't moved into this apartment that you're going to have for your junior year. But given the information that you have so far, um, is there anyone in which that you would recommend to go the private landlord route over a big agency? Is it kind of like based on how many people you have, or your personality, or comfort level?
I mean, I think that like if I think most people actually prefer private landlords. That's also the reason why we thought we were gonna get like a good deal in a sense. Like even
Mhm.
if it was a bad apartment, like we still weren't part of a group, because that's like the stigma there is that the groups usually aren't great with maintenance. Like they're not dependable, and since they're so vast, like they like basically kind of like monopolize areas in Temple, and so they can get lazy and stuff. So we thought we were actually like taking the better route, but so I think it just depends what private landlord you get. Ours just happened to not be that great, so I can see definitely like the pros and cons to each.
Got it.
Right now I can only see the pros for the new one because I haven't experienced anything yet, but it really depends. Like I think generally though, I would say probably the private landlord is a little bit better for maybe freshmen, in the
Mhm.
sense that you have like just one person you're communicating to, versus like the portal system. We now know like how to really use it because we know like what living in your first apartment is like, and like
Mhm.
what maintenance and the rent, how that all works, like, is. So it's easier to like figure that out now.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Have you come across any platforms or any options for you to see how well a landlord has been rated, or like anyone else who's been given feedback on landlords?
So actually, one of my roommates said that there is a site, and she did leave a bad review for our landlord.
Yeah.
However, all three of my roommates, like the other three roommates, don't even know what she's talking about. Like, she's
Mhm.
very bright, so we know that she probably like wanted to seek this. Like, she
Yeah.
didn't, like, this isn't something we knew about. So
Hmm.
obviously our experience was so bad that we would obviously want to leave a review, but I wouldn't really, only because I wouldn't know how.
Got
So, and I would say I'm pretty like not, I mean, I'm not aware, but I'm like pretty average when it comes to like what I think normal college kids are doing and like
it. Mhm.
what they're talking about and what, resources they're using. And I've never heard of whatever she used. So
Got it.
yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe it might be something we should build into Jove, into our platform.
Yeah,
For
I would
people.
recommend that.
Okay. All right. We'll take a look into that. The other thing I wanted to ask you is a lot of freshmen don't know that you have to start looking so early.
Mhm.
Do you, like, what advice would you give to a freshman going in their first semester? Like, how early should they start looking? Like, should they start looking like the second week they're on campus, or what do you recommend?
I mean, that's a good question, because I think that might be like the biggest thing about all of this is that no one knows anything, and that's why I think freshmen, like, I have a hard time believing like people always find housing, because we
Mhm.
almost like didn't. So it's kind of shocking. But when we had come to realize that we needed to find a place, everyone already had them. So that was already like late November. So people had started looking, I want to say probably October.
Okay.
And however, I mean, that's just assuming though that you had those people that you can find a place with. So I mean, kind of like you said, like when you get to college, like you're kind of looking for people that I guess you could live with
Hmm.
for the next year, which is hard to predict because you have a
Right.
whole year ahead of, being friends or whatever, meeting
Mhm.
people. So it's not like ideal, but I think you would have to look or start thinking about it that early. And then yeah, like you have to have something before Thanksgiving, I would say.
Got it. And so let's say you're a freshman. It's October, fall semester, and you're starting to look. What's what's the process look like? Like, where are you looking for apartments? How are you scheduling them right now? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, it was very chaotic, and it's not talked about, which is kind of bizarre because I none of our friends, I mean, me and my roommates are very vocal, I feel like, and we're, you know, transparent. So we were just confused the entire time, like that entire month. We were like, where are you even looking for these places? Because Temple does have their own housing. So Temple has apartment buildings. They're
Mm-hmm.
usually much more expensive, obviously on campus, so you have that advantage, but most people don't really look there just because off campus is like, more freedom and stuff. However, where we ended up, for instance, is on the northern side, I believe, of Broad. Like we're above Broad, obviously. So we're on 18th, and so like through Broad and then up, um, that's off campus. Like that's considered the area kids live. However, there's also my like midway through my sophomore year, I would meet my friends and they'd be like, "Oh, my apartment's here," and this is on the entire other side of Temple, like 13th and below.
Close
So
to Center City.
yeah, so I didn't even know that that was also like a region where like that's also considered another hotspot, and it's not like they were uncommon for being there. Like that's a lot of kids, and it's huge. Like you don't realize how big it is. So obviously there's housing everywhere, but like freshman me like didn't know like even where off campus was, and for all I knew it was like 4 blocks, and it wasn't even like whatever. So really you don't know much, I would say, at all about where off campus, what that means. And then once you start looking, um, like with Facebook and all that stuff, it just kind of gets chaotic because you have like the roommate situation and then you have to match that with a place and everyone's looking at the same places. So it's just kind of like really stressful, and especially when you don't really know the area that well. Like I'm literally from Philadelphia and I still didn't know anything. So I
Right.
can only imagine like kids who like just aren't from there at all. I don't know how they do it. So
How long did it take you? So when you start looking for a place, let's say you had three roommates.
mhm.
Um, how long did it take you to find? You started looking in November. How long did it take you to actually find the place that you're looking at? And how many places did you look for, or did you look at before saying, okay, this is the one?
Well, so I believe it took 3 weeks
Okay,
because
that's pretty quick.
yeah, which isn't, well, that's because we were rushed. We didn't really have, like, we know that some people took their time, but
Okay,
I don't know how they knew, but whatever. But we were rushed, so we only really had a certain amount of weeks. And so in those 3 weeks, we really weren't that thorough, which is what we kind of learned for sophomore year. But then, like, I'll get into, like, it doesn't even really, sophomore year wasn't that much better. So, but um basically we would like go on Facebook and stuff, and it was mostly all of us like looking on our own and then like coming together and being like, oh, I found this place, and showing pictures and stuff. And also we're not really sure what we're looking for either. Like that's the other thing, like your first apartment, like is there good and like what's good and what's bad, like what's better. So for all we know, we were like, this place looks good, like I don't know what else like to say about it. But we would go, and we also trying to get all of your roommates at the same time to be able to go to to a tour of
hmm
a house or apartment is impossible. You all have different schedules, and then you have to really you have to be comfortable enough with trusting other people's judgment. So obviously me and my friends are very close, my roommates and I, so we were lucky that like me and one of other roommate made the decision for us four, and they just
okay.
trusted because they saw the pictures and they were like, we trust you. And that was as good as we could get. So but again, like you would have to have that kind of level of like trust, because other people sometimes are stubborn, or I mean, for to be fair, like it is where they're living, but they want to see it and all this stuff, and you don't really have that much time to have everyone see it.
Got
So
it.
yeah.
That's challenging.
Mhm.
What should freshmen, or I guess anyone looking for their first apartment at Temple, what are some of the big things that they should look for when looking for a place
um
to
Really.
feel like the most comfortable during the school year, like so that they can like get places, so they can like feel safe, like
um I would say like definitely look at location, and do so like not really more on paper. Like when we saw like where it was, Burke Street is considered like a street that a lot, we knew like a lot of kids were living on. Like there's we have friends on the lacrosse team and they have their house on Burks, but little did we know it's like on 16th and Burks, which is really
mhm,
not, but all we heard is Burks. So we're like, oh, that's got to be fine. And then you go, and then later on we realize, wait, this really isn't the location we thought it was. So I would say definitely evaluating that. And um also it should we were only lucky that we had, like, it wasn't really a grocery store, but I guess it was like a corner store kind of thing,
yeah,
that convenience store kind of thing that was close by. But if we didn't have that, we would have been 10 times more miserable, because the Fresh Grocer, which is the main grocery store, is on the other side of campus. It would
yeah,
have
it's
been,
pretty far.
yeah, it's like I never would have gone there. Like I
Mhm,
never went. Like I just did not get my groceries there, because it's a hike and you're not carrying that in all of the seasons, like when it's
yeah,
cold. So that wasn't an option. The pharmacies, like I would only go there when I was on campus, because they're impossible to get to from where we were. And like, so I mean, again, really look at location in regards to, like pharmacies and grocery stores and other like essential things you might need, which you really don't pay attention to in the moment, because you just assume like, oh, I'll just walk there.
mhm,
Like then you're not going to want to. Um, and then I would be a little bit harder on the not the landlord, the person who shows you the place,
The agent.
the agent,
Mhm.
because our agent was sneaky, and we like now realize that. Again, like a lot of this I think is taking advantage of like the situation. Like these kids don't really know much, and like
Mhm.
for all they know, they're not really lying, but like they know that it's not the full truth. Like I mean, I'm pretty sure that our agent knew that our security system wasn't up and like active, like it wasn't used, but he just said like that is it's there, like they have it, and like for all we know, like oh, like so we just overlook it, or we're like oh, like is this good, or is that, you don't ask that as many questions as, and they know that, and they know you're not really going to grill them because
Mhm.
they
You
know.
don't know what that
So
happened. You don't know what you don't know.
yeah, so I mean I would definitely just be a little bit like more willing to ask questions, even if you're eager to get something, like kind of look further into it, and probably like location, and those would be the biggest things I think.
Got it. Okay. Um, let's talk about the lease. I feel like a lot of students going in have no idea what to expect when they're signing a lease. Um, so how long have your leases been? Like what's the regular term of the lease?
I think it's a complete year,
Okay.
but um the thing with the our lease situation, like our personal situation, which happens to be a lot of student situation, is that our leases didn't line up correctly, and they're within blocks away, so you would assume like everything would kind of be uniform at this point, just
Mhm.
because kids are constantly moving and out and in, and like moving within like out, that area. It's not really that normal to stay in one place all 3 years off campus, so that should be a norm. And obviously like with the leases, I mean this all has to do I think with like being young and like being freshmen at that point, or even sophomores. You're not really reading the lease that
Mhm.
carefully, and had we have known that our lease ended at such an awkward time, like I mean not that necessarily we could have done much, but we would have known, or we could have maybe worked something, I don't know, but it's just like things you just don't know because you didn't read it, and the leases just didn't match up, and it's like an awkward amount of time. It's like 2.5 weeks or something we have in between, and it's kind of impossible for some kids to have a gap in between because, for instance, one of my roommates lives in Maryland, and now we have like this interval of time where we have furniture that we don't have anywhere to put it. So she had to get like a storage unit for herself, and then the rest of us were able to take things back. But like it was just bizarre
That's
that
such
the
a pain.
leases, yeah, and it was really a pain. And it was very stressful. Um, yeah,
So
so
what's the what kind of lease should freshmen look for? Like if they're looking for their lease end, what's a good lease end date? Or like what are some terms that they can ask the landlord? Like, hey, when the lease ends, I would like this to happen.
um, I think Well, I think both dates are appropriate. Like, for instance, our lease ended July 28th, which isn't that bad of a time to then move or to start going into a new place or move into a place, only because it's late enough in July that like August is almost there. And if you start, we usually start around August 24th. So, you have like a solid month to like get settled or to move. And I think that probably makes sense. Our new lease, though, we're moving in the 8th. If you think about it, like because we moved in around July for our first one, but now we have to move in August 8th for the next one.
Mhm.
For our first place, like that would have been a little bit more stressful because you would have wanted to be there maybe like not even a week later, and you still don't have like, either your Wi-Fi and your Pico and your gas figured out.
Mhm.
So I think around like July 28th and August 1st sound like good days. I mean, July 28th is kind of random. I'm just using that, but August 1st seems kind of like clean and nice and like makes
Mhm.
sense. Like the month seems proper. So I think that would be a good, beginning and end of a lease.
Got it. Okay. And how did the lease process work? So you have three other roommates. Did you all have to sign the same lease? Did you have to sign it? Did you show up at like the same office or something like that? How did the lease signing work?
I believe for both, like the group we're now with and then the independent landlord, I think everything was online. Everything was
Okay.
through some electronic leasing thing. they were different. I know they were different like companies or websites, but they were both online and it was pretty easy, I think. Again, a lot of the other stuff is just kind of like getting your roommates to do everything on time. Again, like if you don't sign certain things, you lose the apartment. Like it's just there's so much stuff, having to get like the down deposit. So I feel like once you get to signing the lease, that's not too hard. Like that's the easiest part, I would say, of the whole like entire thing, like the whole
Got
situation.
it.
So
What was the what type of payments did you have to make up front? Like, was there first month, last month, security, something else, putting money down?
I believe it's security, and then once you have this, the security deposit, I believe guarantees you the place. And
Okay,
then once you get through that step, then you pay the first months and the last months.
got it. And is the security deposit the same amount as the monthly rent, or is it different?
I believe so.
Okay, got it. And then, did your parents have to co-sign as well?
Yes, for both.
Got it. Okay. So, so that's normal. Right,
Mhm.
yeah. The other question I had for you is there's a lot of students that will end up going to, they'll do a semester abroad, or they'll spend summers at an internship somewhere. From your experience, what usually happens with the apartment? Do you just continue to pay?
Well, we would have experienced that this year because our one roommate was supposed to go abroad next semester. Obviously, it got canceled like due to like COVID and the circumstances, but we never even talked about it, which I think we would have to have done at this point. But I think what most people do is they sublet it.
Okay.
And the only like experience I've had with subletting is seeing my other friends like do it or, you know, sublet like they rent that way. So I believe like it's more common than I thought it would be. Like it is like some people sublet for random amounts of time.
Hmm.
Um, so I know that it's a thing, and that I think that would most likely have been what it would have been. And I don't really know how he would have reacted to that because that would have been a little bit of an adjustment. But I do know that that's probably the most likely thing to happen.
Have when someone goes to sublet their room, are they usually doing it at the price that they're paying rent, or are they doing it at a discount price? What have you heard or seen?
I think it depends on like the situation and the urgency because I think my friend paid less because this one girl like just couldn't be there and like obviously she'd rather have someone paying than not. So I think she needed that to happen quickly, but I think for the most part it's usually the same amount.
Got it. Okay. Um, the other thing I wanted to ask is, um, let's say, well, you're kind of going through the process now of moving into your next apartment, but when you go back to the search process as a freshman, what kind of words would you use to associate how you're feeling at that time, looking for your first apartment?
Um Stressful, definitely. Confused, a little like blindsided, like
Okay.
yeah. But mostly stressed, but like to a whole nother level because I just remember like thinking like, what do you do if you like can't find somewhere? So it's really just like just stressful overall and also chaotic, I would say, because everyone is asking someone for like a specific number of roommates, like if you needed two because you wanted this place and you can't get it unless you have like two more people. So I think it was a chaotic process. So that would definitely be a way to describe it too.
Okay. What recommendations or suggestions would you have for freshmen that are about to start this process, to help them make it a little bit less stressful, less chaotic?
Um, I would definitely just know, like going in, that this is something that's going to come up really soon. It's going to creep up on you. And I think just to be prepared for the timing, like just don't put it off.
Hmm.
And again, like with the roommate situation, it's kind of uncomfortable in a sense because you don't know if you should pick people that you can live with or your best friend. And that can be different. So
Mm,
there's definitely some drama regarding that. And like for instance, I would say if I was a freshman, even though I got lucky and like the people I can live with are also my friends, I would say obviously like live with people like you're acquaintances with or friendly with, but just try to look for people you could live with and like are reliable and like, you could not too stubborn because you're going to have to be like dealing with a lot of different options and going back and forth. So more like look for roommates, not really for friends, if that makes sense.
interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, this is really valuable. I'm sure that people listening have found this to be extremely valuable. Are there any closing remarks that you'd like to mention that you haven't said so far? Anything that we haven't covered?
Um, I don't think so. I think like obviously the whole point of this, I think if there was like a resource that could give you mostly like the location and the option, I never even really thought how important it could be, but having like the option to see people who needed roommates because that's probably a big factor of what holds people up. So
Mhm.
that could, definitely be solved that way. So definitely like the location, yeah, that and just looking as soon as possible.
Got it. Okay. Well, we'll hope to deliver that with Jove. We're committed to being a resource for students during the time that they're renting, whether they're looking for a place, trying to find roommates, or subletting. Right now, we're redeveloping the app to fit college students, and we'll continue making strides. But feedback like this is as helpful for us as I know it will be for freshmen that are looking, and what features to create, and for them knowing where and how to look for an apartment, because it's a daunting process if it doesn't happen early enough. Cool.
Yeah.
Molly, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
yeah, we appreciate it. And tune in again for upcoming podcasts where we interview students at your university to give you insights on what you should look for when you're renting at college. Thanks for tuning in.